Bud here at IPD. Today we're going to be going over a spark plug service on the 2015 and later 2-liter VEA motors. Just a few tools required for this. You're going to need a T40 Torx to take off this upper engine cover, a 14mm spark plug socket, preferably magnetic, and then some spark plugs. We have multiple options listed on our website. Today we're going to be using the Volvo OE brand. Alright, during this overview, we're going to go over how to service the spark plugs. Pretty common hand tools. We recommend on these motors doing the service around every 50,000 miles. All of these motors are at least turbocharged. Some are turbo and supercharged, so they do cause some additional wear on the plugs themselves. We're going to start with removing this upper engine cover. Just these little plastic screws, and it's a T40 bit. They shouldn't be tight, so you should be able to just get them out by hand fairly easily. These actually stay in the engine cover itself, so they don't come all the way out. You just loosen it and then lift the whole piece off. Alright, on this motor in particular, you have a coil on plug setup here. So each one of these is an individual coil pack, and the spark plug is contained underneath it in the head. So there's 4 electrical connectors, 1 per coil, and then 4 bolts with an 8mm head that hold them in place. We're going to start by disconnecting these electrical connectors and then removing the bolts and pulling the coil pack out. Okay, so we're going to start with disconnecting these electrical connectors. There's a lot of wires that run through here, so you're going to want to make sure it's the wiring attached to this black coil pack here. So they do have a little item that you depress here. So you're going to depress this top piece, and you should be able to slide that out of the way. So we're just going to go across. We're going to do all 4 of these. All right, so for this you're going to need an 8mm socket. Just going to put it right on that bolt head here. You're going to loosen each one. They come loose fairly easily. So once we crack all these loose, we can spin the bolt out, and then that coil pack will be ready for removal. Alright, now that we have those bolts out, we're going to see that the coil pack is loose. So you're just going to pull that out. A couple of them are a little tight, so you got to work them through these wires here. Once you pull it out, just go ahead and set it to the side. We'll do that same process for all 4. Alright, so to remove the spark plugs, you are going to need an extension along with your 14mm socket. It helps to have 6 inches or longer. You're probably going to want 9 or a 12-inch. So when you put this in, the spark plugs are in at kind of an angle, so you can get it in there, feel by hand. It is locked on the hex part of the plug. Alright, so as you can see, this spark plug's hole is very deep, so that's why it's important to have a specific spark plug socket that either has a rubber insert or a magnet in it. So once you loosen this spark plug, it will come out with the socket rather than having to grab something and try to stick it down in there to pull it out. Alright, so we've removed the first spark plug. We're using Volvo spark plugs here, so they are pre-gapped to the spec for your motor. So what you're going to do is you're going to start by sticking that in there. It doesn't fall out. And then we're going to gently insert this. You're gonna want to start by threading this in by hand. Since this motor has an aluminum head, just want to make sure that you get those threads started correctly. We're going to recommend doing one by one so there's less potential for anything to fall into those holes. Once you snug it down by hand, you can pull this back out and then move on to the next one. We'll come back and we'll use a torque wrench to torque these later. Now that I got the first one snugged in there, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second one and remove it and then reinstall until we're done. Okay, so we're down to the last spark plug. If you have removed your spark plugs and see that it has a different number on the spark plug compared to the Volvo one that you're installing, don't worry, we have sourced the newest revisions. Volvo updates the spec on these spark plugs quite often, so we just always make sure to carry the newest version for you. Okay, so we're to the point, we've have everything snugged down by hand, so we're going to torque these spark plugs in. For these engines, it is a very low torque. It's 13 foot-pounds or 18 newton meters. So for such a low torque, we're going to use this torque wrench here. We go through. So each of the spark plugs does have a little crush washer on it, so when you feel it snug down and you think you're going too tight, if you have a calibrated torque wrench and it's set to 13, you will still have to go a little farther. Alright, so what I was talking about here is these plugs have this washer on here that is made to crush as you tighten it down. So once you get it hand tight, you start to torque it, you go a few turns, it'll crush this, and then you'll feel it snug down a little bit more, and then your torque wrench should click. Now that we have all the plugs torqued down, we're going to reinstall the coil packs. And if you feel that you don't have enough room on this hole here on the driver's side of the motor, you can remove this clamp, take off this hose, and gain more access. Alright, we're just going to continue reinstalling these across the motor. You're going to want to make sure that you get them on the spark plug and that it roughly sits over that mounting hole that we're going to put back in. So it's not going to sit perfectly because there's a little bit of give to the coil, but if it's far off, then you may need to pull it back out and make sure that you're actually over the tip of the spark plug. Alright, now that we have those in there, we can go ahead and grab our bolts and begin to thread them in here. You should just be able to put all these in by hand to hold the coils in place. And we'll come back through and we'll tighten the bolts down the rest of the way. Okay, now that we have all these bolts threaded in by hand, we're going to take our 1/4 inch drive. We're just going to snug these down. There's no real tension on the bolts, so you don't need to have them too tight. Once we get all these snugged down, we can reinstall our breather hose. We'll come back and do this clamp later, and then we can just go through and click these electrical connectors back into place. You should hear an audible click as you put them on there. Alright, after you make sure that you have this hose clamp back in place, if you remove that hose and all of the connectors plugged in, you're going to go ahead and reinstall the engine cover. Push that down. Again, these are just plastic nuts, so they thread in very easily. secure that into place, and then you should be able to start the car and have a job complete. Thanks for watching, going through this with us. If you have any questions, go ahead and give our customer service staff a call or visit ipdusa.com.